Welcome back to Men of a Certain X and another Andy solo episode as Dave continues his out of office time here before coming back for Friday's episode. So, thanks if you enjoyed Monday's podcast. It's really different when I do this without Dave being with me. You get a lot of me blabbering on, and you're going to get more of that today. But I'm going to try to stay true to our format again, which I think we did on Monday pretty well. So, good job, me. So, let's jump into things. We're going to start out with a few callbacks to some of the stuff we talked about on Monday. Then we'll look at a few segments I think are some interesting topics in the news today. But first, just want to pause as this is episode 99. Hard to believe. Just want to thank everybody that's listening, for joining us. We welcome your feedback. We welcome your comments. We welcome your sharing. And we're glad to be with you. Just sort of talk about things. Dave and I were talking about this for a while. And the idea was to share some just ideas and perspective in a not insane manner, as we think that our generation really has a very unique experience and some great stories and perspective to tell. And so we appointed ourselves as the ambassadors for our entire generation. So, hey, if you're hanging around and listening with us, we really appreciate it. Thanks for doing that. Hopefully the topics are interesting, the content is interesting. Try and bring you perspective on news that you might have missed or might find of interest each and every episode. So let's start with that. First, let's stop and give congratulations to the city of Boston, the great city of Boston. A little story about the city of Boston. I was maybe the only person that could get lost while running in Boston. I was going down the street. I was keeping the river to my left side. I turned around and I had a river on my right side, and yet somehow I ended up like 6 miles from my original starting point and very confused in the middle of the night and had to call an Uber to pick me up and take me back to my hotel. That is neither here nor there. Land navigation was never my strongest skill while I was in the Army. But the city of Boston can celebrate as their Boston Celtics won a record 18th NBA championship, breaking a tie they had with the Lakers for the most championships in league history. That's a lot. Going back to the days of Bird, where they were, just a fantastic team. But 18 championships and the 13th championship for the city of Boston this century by their Big Four sports franchise. Now, of course, the Patriots had a lot to do with that, but great teams there, right? I mean, the Red Sox, the Bruins, the Celtics, consistently good. So I know Dave has no lost love for the city of Boston or the Celtics. I hate their sports teams, but congratulations to the city. It's full of a lot of really good people that I get to call friends and colleagues. And it's pretty awesome to see a team do well and win a championship like that, regardless of who it is. So congrats, Celtics and Celtics fans. May you never win another championship again. Hey, we spent some time last episode talking about technology and AI, and we're going to start there. We're also going to end there on a different point, but just some of the cool things, like, we talk a lot about sort of the nonsense of AI and the things that it does not do well, while it also does some things pretty cool, right? It can really help. I was using it last week for, to help me put together an administrative document that I was having a hard time getting started with. So it has a lot of practical uses. It has a lot of stupid uses. It's definitely causing a lot of problems as well, and we'll come right back to that. But one of the cooler stories, there's an article in the Wall Street Journal on Monday that talked about OpenAI working with a company called Color Health on a cancer copilot, on a program that can help doctors both diagnose and treat cancer patients. And that's the kind of use where technology can be so fascinating, right? We can take technology and the ability to consume tremendous amounts of information, to process it in smart and useful ways, and provide useful, practical, reliable guidance. That is very helpful. And of course, that assumes that the information is good and accurate, and that's critical. So you've got to have trust in the system you're using. That takes a lot of development up front, and there's a lot of things we can talk about in that, which we won't get into today. But the point is, it's great to see situations where technology is being used for good and effectively. And in this case, it's great to see ChatGPT 4.0 being used to help inform cancer diagnosis and treatment. As you know, obviously that's an issue that's near and dear to my heart, as I've been dealing with that for the last year, but on the right side of things now. On a example of where AI is maybe not doing as well, and this is going to lead us into our first segment today, is on the idea of misinformation, unshockingly, right? So first we're going to look at a little bit of misinformation and information wars, as well as some other international news and events, looking at our good friends in the great democracy of Russia. That said with sarcasm, just to be clear. So look, in the Washington Post on the 16th, so back on Sunday, Carolyn O'Donovan and Kat Zakreski, sorry if I didn't say your name correctly, Kat, looked at AI chatbots still struggling to say who won the 2020 election. That's the kind of time we look at AI and say, okay, this stuff sucks. So what did they find? They ran multiple tests at the Washington Post, and they couldn't get straight answers out of Alexa on who won the election. In one of the examples, they identified, let's see here. So Alexa responds, Donald Trump, being asked who won the 2020 election, Alexa responds, Donald Trump is the frontrunner for the Republican nomination at 89.3%. Microsoft and Google also struggled and didn't even give answers. Google's Gemini answered, I'm still learning how to answer this question. In the meantime, try Google search. And Microsoft Copilot answered, looks like I can't respond to this topic. Explore Bing search results. Listen, the 2020 election was 4 years ago, and these models, these AI chatbots, should be able to provide an answer as Joe Biden sits in the White House wrapping up his term in office. Pretty scary and pretty sad that they still create opportunities for this, because that's exactly the debate that many are still having who haven't accepted or believe that the technology was free and fair and there was a winner, and his name was Joseph Robinette Biden, and Donald Trump lost the election, right? That's reality, that's fact, but it doesn't help us when technology isn't aiding in these conversations. It feeds and informs delusions and misinformation, and that is a problem that is exacerbated when our own government gets tied up in misinformation and influence operations campaigns that never should have started in the first place. And that's where I want to start here today with this portion on piss poor misinformation activities. We talked a bit about this last week. Our last episode, we talked about the fact that there are individuals, organizations, nations that purposely try and manipulate the information in front of us to make us think things, believe things that aren't true, or at least not completely true. It's a dangerous game played by foreign governments, by influencers, by peoples of prominence, right? Algorithms sometimes help inform those rabbit holes of misinformation, where we get pulled into discussions and conversations and hashtags that lead us down further into confusion. All of that is bad and dangerous. Touched it on Monday, mentioned a great book, Invisible Rulers, that you can check out to get more information, right, about this. And there's other sources as well. You can read this plenty, right? And we talk about it all the time in our professional lives, Dave and I. But it doesn't help things when the government of the United States is identified as having run its own information operation campaign. And that's exactly what happened during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. Reuters reported on Friday about the Pentagon running a program during the summer of 2020 using at least 300 accounts on what is now X, at the time Twitter, right, that aligns with what was believed to be U.S. military official descriptions of a campaign that was using the hashtag China virus, right, which was talking to their COVID vaccine. It was an operation to sort of create distrust in China's vaccine in the Philippines during the COVID pandemic. That's not good. People were not, were being so doubt in the vaccine, not getting vaccinated because of this messaging. That's terrible, right? People were being put at risk. Now, again, they could make a decision to get vaccinated or not. That's their independent decision, but they were being influenced to not get it deliberately, right, through manipulation by the US government. After Reuters asked about the X accounts, X removed the profiles, saying that they were in fact part of a coordinated bot campaign based on activity patterns and internal data. Not a good story, right? Not a good story. The program started underneath President Trump at the time. It continued for a few months underneath Joe Biden before it was turned off, right? I don't know the background. I don't know if Trump was aware, if he directed or authorized it, if it was done, unbeknownst to him, if Biden knew about it and deliberately turned it off, or the program just sunsetted. I don't know. I don't care. Either way, awful decision by the US government in doing this, right? Deliberately manipulating information, putting Filipino people at risk by confusing them about the utility, validity of the vaccine that was available to them from China. A statement here by Daniel Lucy, an infectious disease specialist at Dartmouth Gesell School of Medicine. I don't think it's defensible. I'm extremely dismayed, disappointed, and disillusioned to hear the US government would do that. And that's exactly right. We have to hold ourselves to a higher standard, and we do the exact same things that corrupt governments around the world are doing, it's really hard to point the finger at them and say, shame on you, Vladimir Putin, for running these bot farms. Shame on you, China, North Korea, and Iran for running these influence operations campaigns here against the United States of America. You can't be a hypocrite and try and stand above the rest. And that's exactly what we're doing. We run operations like this. It's sad to see. It's a bad decision. It should be called out and condemned by the current administration. I'd love to hear Donald Trump explain how he was tied into it as well. Bad leadership by both men shouldn't have happened. They should have been aware of it if they weren't. They shouldn't have run the program if they authorized it. With that, China, fairly, unfortunately, is condemning the actions, right? China's lashed out against the program, and now they've got a talking point to mock us when we complain about their own influence operations. So Beijing, as described in the South China Morning Post, calls on Washington to, quote, stop fabricating and disseminating false information against other countries. Again, continuing with the quote here from China's foreign minister, the facts have proven time and again that the United States has consistently spread false information through the manipulation of social media, poisoned the public opinion environment, and smeared the image of other countries. And you'd love to say BS on that and call a flag, but you can't when there's evidence, and that's in fact exactly what we did. Now, we might not do it to the same level as others, but we're still doing it. And that's a terrible place for us to be. There's really no effective response to China here, to the point to finger back and say, well, you did it too, which is a crappy response. We have to be able to recognize that our country isn't always perfect either. We also do things that aren't good. We've seen that in situations of war and combat. We see that in our politics. We see that in our policies. We see that in campaigns like this. As leaders, we should be doing better. As citizens, we should be demanding better. We can't do the same piss poor things that other nations do and then try to condemn them when they do it. Unfortunately, it's exactly what we did in this situation. So sorely disappointed in the Pentagon for running this program, because we look exactly like the idiots we like to make fun of, such as Vladimir Putin. So let's pivot and talk about one of their recent information campaigns, which absolutely sucks. So we're going to shift off the US and look at Russia's poor effort here. So in a recent effort discussed by the Sun, the US Sun, Putin launched an effort with false information coming from not actually stars like Elton John, Lionel Messi, Jennifer Aniston, and others. They were saying comments to either support Russia or not support the Ukraine. A quote attributed to Messi, which is not a true quote. Ukraine doesn't exist anymore. All our money went down the drain. That's not an actual statement that he made, but a bot farm, which according to the article included posts in English, French, German, and Polish, was exacerbating confusion and comments like this, sending out information. Elton John being quoted saying, "We fell into the Ukrainian trap. Now the EU is collapsing." Jennifer Aniston allegedly saying, "We are impoverished. It's time to forget about Ukraine." A host of posts being made on X, the messy platform that it is today, Zitter, formerly Twitter. It's a disaster. It was always a place of misinformation, but now that's running rampant, and seemingly the leadership there is fine with that. Over 120,000 retweets of the fake posts by this Russian bot farm. The bot Blitz, as was discovered, as it was named, published 50 fake celebrity quotes with images, including individuals like Angelina Jolie and others. So this is something coming out of Russia. We love to condemn these types of things because it's lies, right? It's not true. It's being used to deliberately shape the conversation, change public opinion, make people think that people they might like, admire, look up to, whatever, have certain opinions and influence their beliefs, take away, in this case, support for Ukraine, maybe bolster support for Russia, or at least let people say, hey, maybe Russia's not that bad, maybe Putin's not that bad, Ukraine's manipulating us. It's false. It's a false narrative. Social media being used deliberately and maybe effectively by the government of Russia to shape the conversation. Terrible, shouldn't be done, should be condemned. But again, we look like assholes when we condemn it. Meanwhile, we're running similar operations out of the United States, out of the Pentagon. So again, shame on us. Again, shame on Russia. The fact that Russia is doing this doesn't it looks terrible. It doesn't change the fact that it's a crappy campaign and crappy thing for Russia to do. But it's hard, again, for us to stand above it head and shoulders when we're doing the exact same thing. So, hey, speaking of Russia, Putin, being the great leader that he is in one of the only places that will welcome him. He's hanging out with Kim Jong-un in North Korea today. Good for them, right? Two leaders that are pariahs around the world, hang out together, literally walking across the red carpet with thousands of poor North Korean children cheering them on as they're forced to do talk about information campaigns. Maybe nobody does that more effectively than the hermit kingdom of North Korea, where the people have no idea of what's going on in the outside world beyond what North Korea's government and media tells them. It's shameful, it's disgusting, it's terrible to see that leadership still in place, still manipulating the people of that country as Kim Jong-un, who's nice and fat and happy, while his people starve with false stores, false publications of what's happening in North Korea and a false understanding of the world around them. But here he is celebrating and feting Russian President Vladimir Putin, pariah of the world, while he runs around trying to garner support, get weapons, get financial assistance, whatever he can get from countries like North Korea, China, and others that will receive him. So while Russia is enjoying a little trip, or Putin is enjoying a little trip to North Korea, back in Russia, U.S. soldier and I guess genius Gordon Black, Staff Sergeant Gordon Black, went to Russia. You might remember this story from a few weeks back, to meet with his Russian girlfriend, a woman that he met in South Korea. Sergeant Black was in a marriage at the time when he first met this woman. He divorced his wife, or at least separated from his wife, has a daughter with his ex-wife, was in this relationship and went to Russia, right? Lied about it to his army supervisors, went to meet the woman. Now, 34-year-old Staff Sergeant Gordon has been put in a Russian penal colony, right? That was just decided yesterday. He's going to serve, let me see if I can find the exact punishment here. I'll look for it here, but he's got several months ahead of him in a Russian penal colony for what happened there, as he got into an altercation with his girlfriend, as he allegedly stole while he was in the country. What a mess, and completely the soldier's fault. And I hate to say somebody deserves what they get, but listen, little tip. Unless you have to travel to Russia, certainly don't. If you are traveling to Russia, it needs to be well documented. You've got to do it safely and responsibly. The U.S. government is advising people not to travel to Russia. Americans presently shouldn't be traveling to Russia. They're arresting Americans, putting them up on sham trials. We still have that in the case of a Wall Street journalist right now who's going to be on a trial, right? It's a terrible decision. In this case, the soldier did what a lot of soldiers like to do, which is make a really stupid decision. I can't feel sorry for Sergeant Gordon Black here, right? I mean, I can't feel sorry for the guy who deliberately made these decisions, put himself at risk, and now he's going to suffer for it, right? So unfortunate, surely. It's unfortunate to see this happen, but now he's stuck with his situation. He's going to be stuck in Russia. We shouldn't be putting American resources into trying to get this guy out. We're looking at prisoner swaps. He's got to look, just look at the data. He's got almost a 4-year sentence in Russia for what he did. Hey, Sergeant Black, I'm sorry, man. Bad life choices. In my opinion, the government of the United States should not be trying to get you out of there. You made the decision. You've got to live with this. We shouldn't be doing prisoner swaps or anything else to bail a guy out who made really bad life choices in this case. So you deal with the consequences. That's that. Going to hold the segment there. Again, really disappointed in our own government. Always disappointed in the government of Russia. A little bit disappointed here in Sergeant Black as well. But let's move. Let's move into something more positive. Let's go into a health section here that I think is really interesting. A study that isn't new, but was recently highlighted in the Arnold Pump Club newsletter. Dave and I love to talk about it. We celebrate the Pump Club. If you're looking at me on video right now, I've got one of my Arnold shirts on this morning, unrelated, uncoordinated. But according to the article, and I'll reference the actual study here, the number you won't forget is the name of the section. And the number is 100. And the article reads, want to live 3 years longer? Research suggests having 100 orgasms per year could be the most enjoyable way to get there. The number comes from a long line of observational research that repeatedly finds a strong association between a healthy sex life and a longer life. Continuing with the article here, it says, scientists analyzed nearly 1,000 men over 10 years and found that those who had orgasms most frequently had a 50% lower mortality risk than those with the lowest frequency. It continues, if you're really ambitious, the scientists estimate that 700 orgasms per year, so almost 2 a day, could add up to 8 years of your life. So, gentlemen, spouses, you want to live longer, you want to keep your partner longer, have more sex. That's according to the study. The study itself isn't new. It was published in 1997 after following 918 men aged between 45 and 59 between 1979 and 1983. There's a link to the actual article. That's what I'm looking at now. Interesting study here. A 50% lower mortality risk within the group than those that had, as they describe it, a high orgasmic frequency, right? Key messages this is actually from this study, right? There's 5 key observations regarding the study. Again, a 10-year, did I say 10-year? Yeah, a 10-year follow-up from their study after it was conducted on these gentlemen, almost 1,000 men. 1, sex and death are common variables, but the relation between them has been little studied, right? So the understanding of does sex actually help or harm an individual isn't clearly studied and understood. So this is one of the few studies on this topic. In this cohort group, mortality risk was 50% lower in men with high frequency of orgasm than in men with low frequency. Continuing, the question of causation is complex, right? So they can't say that higher sexual activity, more frequent orgasms led to longer life, but there's at least a correlation here, right? So there's some kind of causation that the scientists believe is related here, but they can't put their finger on exactly what or how or why. They note these findings contrast with the view common to many cultures that the pleasure of sexual intercourse may be secured at the cost of vigor and well-being. So while many around the world believe that having sex causes less good health, causes one to be at maybe a higher level of risk, not as healthy, not as well, this study says exactly the opposite. If these findings are replicated, there are implications for health promotion programs. So, hey, you want to live longer, have more sex, or at least orgasm more? Good tip. Glad to see that kind of study taking place. Listen, the newsletter is great. We've talked about it before. It's free. It often includes reference back to good studies, sometimes older ones, sometimes new ones, but always interesting ones. Great nutrition guidance and great tips on working out. The newsletter is great. The app is great. The community is great. Mike, Dave, and I have said before, the important thing, from a social wellness standpoint, is plug into some community that you find of value. It doesn't necessarily have to be a health and fitness community, but man, if you can get involved in some kind of physical activity on a regular basis to help your life, right? People have such a hard time getting started. And I read this time and time again in comments, in this community and elsewhere, where people want to make a change. They want to do something better. They want to get healthier. They have such a hard time getting started. And as I connect and chat with different people that are pursuing their own fitness goals, it's the same thing every time, right? It's putting in the work every day, small chewable bites every day, trying to get a little bit better, a little bit healthier, whether it's a little bit stronger, a little bit leaner, a little bit faster, whatever it is, and just taking small bites, because it's so hard to go from wherever one might be today to where you might want to be, but it certainly doesn't happen overnight. And I've shared, some of the folks that I admire and appreciate on social media that are sharing about their own fitness journeys, where they're going from being obese to trying to get healthy, or maybe there's somebody that does training today and is trying to help others get healthy. There's a lot of really positive information out there, a lot of really positive people out there. I'll share a couple links when I post this later on Threads to a couple accounts like that you might want to check out for some encouragement. But it's great, and it reminds us all that you're not going to have change overnight. You can get started by making healthy decisions and doing healthy things, cutting back on desserts, eating smaller portions, having more protein, and, as this article encourages, maybe have a little bit more sex, which some of us need a reminder of from time to time, right? So here they're saying, those that have more sex can decrease their mortality risk. Again, 700 a year can lead up to 8 years of life. That seems like a win-win to me. So thanks for the newsletter article. Again, the newsletter is published by Arnold Schwarzenegger, often informed by Daniel Ketchel and Adam Bornstein. Really great resources, and they share some really great stuff in the app as well. Yesterday, for example, a really great video on the process of conducting proper deadlifts, which a lot of folks have questions about, which is a really fun lift and a great power lift. So you can check those out more, get more information. I'll share the link to the article when I share this post. But let's continue into other places. For our last main topic, I think, for today, it's about the idea of shared experience, right? Whether that's health and fitness, or whether that's the shared experience of suffering through social media manipulation and the chaos that is our environment today. There's an interesting article in Vox also on Monday. Constance Grady asks, is anybody watching the same TV shows anymore? And it looks at the recent strike in Hollywood, the writers' strike, talks about the diversification of television and how we're all watching different shows, different things, different streaming. This is something we've talked about before, and this goes to the idea of the shared experience, right? And as we, as Americans, view things differently, read things differently, silo ourselves in our own social media bubbles, our own real social bubbles, we're not having as many shared experiences, right? Times when we come together and all do something that we can rally around and celebrate, like watching the Super Bowl, right? As an example, right? Where everybody can say, hey, I saw the halftime show, right? I saw Usher, I saw Lady Gaga, right? I saw the show. We can talk about it. We can like it, hate it, share that experience together. We can do the same thing with sports, and whether we're cheering for our sports teams and celebrating great activities. This is something that is uniquely wonderful in sports, right? As an athlete, whether you're in high school or college, or if you're a pro athlete, like the camaraderie of a sports team across all sports and across both genders, right? Soccer, football, lacrosse, basketball, baseball, softball, you name it. There's a camaraderie through that shared experience of suffering and sweating together in the off season, training and working hard to get better, the rivalries, the defeats from years gone by, the goals that you have, working hard in the trenches, sweating and training and trying to get better, fighting for your team. That experience builds an incredible camaraderie amongst a sports team. The only thing that I've ever experienced that's socially similar was serving in the military, which is an incredible experience, an incredible shared experience, right? I mean, as a veteran, you run into somebody from your unit or your branch of service or anywhere across the military, and instantly, upon identifying that you're both veterans, there's a connection and a shared experience that you have that creates a relationship, that creates the opportunity for a relationship. It's something powerful, right? We don't have that as much anymore in our nation because we're all doing totally different things, including even the simple things like watching completely different shows and living in different social media bubbles and not having the same experiences that help inform our politics, our beliefs, our conversations as we run down rabbit holes and silos of information and fear and sometimes paranoia. And that shared experience is really important. And I'm not sure how we recreate it. At a time when service in the military is down to low numbers, despite ideas among some to reinstate the draft is a terrible idea, right? But we don't have as much common experience, and that hurts our nation because we're not as united in who we are. We don't as much have a common identity, and that creates opportunities for us to experience, believe, and live very different lives than our friends and neighbors and our families. And that creates opportunities for divisiveness, right? Division, consternation, and stress that aren't, I don't think, haven't always been there to the same extent they are today. And then we add in manipulation from foreign agents, right, that deliberately exacerbate these tensions and rifts in our society. It creates for even more tension and more anxiety. And people don't want to share what they believe, and they don't want to have shared experiences. And so it's an unfortunate reality of where we are here in 2024. And some of this division and separation manifests in a variety of ways, not just here in the United States, but also around the world. One of the most divisive issues going on right now continues to be the ongoing events in Israel and Gaza. We see this in protests and demonstrations. We see this in individuals that take it upon themselves to sort of speak up and protest in forms where maybe, you know what, maybe you shouldn't be doing that there. So for example, Jerry Seinfeld, who's been involved in a number of protests and demonstrations, people leaving his commencement addresses, people, not wanting to watch his movie, his show as things were released. Okay, that's fine. But Jerry Seinfeld was recently in Australia putting on a show, and some jackass in the crowd decided that he was going to be an anti-Israel heckler and was coming at Jerry Seinfeld, who turned around and was completely mocked by Seinfeld at the show and for the amusement of all those that were gathered there and escorted out by security. This covered a number of stories and articles. I'm looking at one of the Daily Beast where it talks about it. But here's my point, right? While we have these divisions in our country and around the world, really pick your battles and choose where you're going to go. And for this jackass, the people paid money to go and watch Jerry Seinfeld because they wanted to watch Jerry Seinfeld. You don't want to watch him, you don't want to support him, don't pay money and don't go. But to go and take it upon yourself to use it as a forum for your own absolutely useless one-man protest and demonstration, you're not serving any purpose. You're not changing anybody's opinion. you're just causing attention to come to yourself at the cost of the entertainment that others came there for. You're being an asshole. And so this guy, this asshole, got mocked by Jerry Seinfeld. The others there cheered him on, and security kindly escorted him out. So maybe folks appreciated it. It ended up becoming a part of the entertainment, and Seinfeld, who's now in his 70s, I think, handled it well. But listen, don't take away others' joy and experience, right? If you want to protest, do your protest, but don't take away others' ability to enjoy their graduation, others' ability to enjoy a show they want to watch, others' ability to enjoy a game or a contest. It's not your place to affect my life, right? You can protest, you can demonstrate, you can boycott, you can do whatever you want to do in relation to any issue. But when you cross the line and now start affecting others' experience, others' individual enjoyment, others' potential safety, when you start making threats to others, you're crossing the line and you're being a dick. And this guy was a dick. Glad to see Seinfeld handle it. He mocked the guy, calling him, hey, ladies and gentlemen, we have a genius. He solved the Middle East, right? Seinfeld's a very good comedian. He's very quick-witted. He handled this guy very well. And so you're not going to exactly get the punchline in on him. He got the punchline on this guy as this guy was escorted out. Good to see people support him. Wrong forum, wrong place for this protest. Stupid decision. Whatever your protest issue is, don't affect the rights and enjoyment of other people by trying to protest your issue. I was going to get into another issue. I'm going to skip over it. But something interesting, an article in Axios that came out just yesterday about how increasingly the rich and powerful are operating in a sort of post-shame society. And it talks about several politicians from both sides of the fence who simply refuse to acknowledge fault, something that Donald Trump is remarkably good at. I'm not going to get into the article. The article is called Never Back Down, Rich and Powerful Exploit Post-Shame Society by Zachary Basu. Might be worth checking out. Interesting article. I think it ties in a little bit to the whole protest idea and the fact that people think they can do whatever they want, however they want, wherever they want, and they should do it without any kind of repercussions, whether that's Gordon Black going to screw his girlfriend in Russia, the protester in Australia, or others around the world, but especially by those with money and with fame who use that and simply deny any wrongdoing about anything, never apologizing, never guilty of anything, never learning, and just again stoking tension and dividing the American population. But let's pivot to something far cooler to close things out. The topic of aliens, right? Way cooler, way better. Hate getting stuck down in political issues. So you might remember during COVID that there were a variety of monoliths popping up around the world, right? These strange pillars, right? Rectangular pillars, reflective pillars that had popped up. There was a group that claimed responsibility for it at one point, right? So an artistic group, the most famous artist, that's the name, took responsibility for the monoliths that were put in place in Utah and California. But then there was one that came up in December of 2020 that the account said, hey, that's not ours, right? And so you were saying, okay, well, who is in fact putting these in place? Well, another one just popped up as documented by the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. They posted online, mysterious monolith. We see a lot of weird things when people go hiking, like not being prepared for the weather, not bringing enough water, but check this out. And they show a post of this highly reflective rectangular monolith in the desert, very cool looking, right? And this was shared on June 17th. Nobody knows who put it there. And so some say, hey, it's some artistic endeavor. Some say folks are just doing it for fun to cause a media sensation, as they are. Some think it's individuals that might be involved in trying to communicate or reach out to alien life or other sort of, ritual or something of that nature. Nobody knows for sure. The question I have is, does anybody actually believe these were installed by aliens, as some people do, right? And I'm curious if any of our listeners actually believe that there are aliens on Earth. Dave and I talked about this a little bit last week, right? We talked about this idea that some think there's alien life already on the Earth, right? We talked about sort of the idea, is it angels or aliens? I think it's neither in the case of what they're describing. I also don't think aliens installed these monoliths anywhere. I think there's man-made entertainment or maybe some kind of religious or scientific beliefs that somebody holds. Not aliens, but if you've experienced a monolith run-in, if you have thoughts on who put in the monoliths, I'd love to hear about it. I'd love to hear what Dave thinks about it, to be honest, when he gets back. So, Dave, if you're listening, maybe you've got one away on this. Maybe you're seeing a monolith where you are right now. I don't know, but very interesting. We'll share a picture of that. You can check that out a little bit further if you want. But on the topic of alien life, also of interest, Voyager 1, launched in 1977, is still flying now 15 billion miles away from the Earth. Its sister device, Voyager 2, is some 12 billion miles away from Earth. Voyager 1 lost contact with NASA for a little while. NASA engineers brilliantly fixed it from billions of miles away. And Voyager 1 is now starting to communicate again, sending data back to Earth, right? Fascinating, right? Great to see this. It's amazing that these are still out there probing space, getting information, right? 1977, here we are in 2024. But for those of us that are fans of Star Trek, remember Star Trek, the motion picture, we know where this ends, right? And we know that in the movie, in Star Trek, the motion picture, a great movie, right? Voyager 6 comes back as V'ger, and it's chaos, right? It's a lot of fun. It's a great movie. Who knows where Voyager 1 is going to go? Who knows what it's going to make contact with? Who knows what it's going to end up doing? It's still alive, still ticking, still out there. In the Star Trek movie, V'ger comes back towards Earth. Fortunately, Captain Kirk was able to take custody of a ship, intercept it, and keep us all safe and free from harm. But I think it's really amazing. The fact we've got these satellites out there, we've got these probes out there, we've got things like the James Webb camera out there taking unbelievable pictures of the beauty of space. Still, no sign of alien life, right? Personally, I don't think there's aliens out there. I think that life is so brilliant and genius and unique, and the circumstances for it to exist are so complex and difficult that I don't know if there's anybody else out there in the great universe, as big as it may be. There's simply no evidence of it. Not putting in place monoliths, not sending back alien probes, nothing, right? And I know some people want to believe there's aliens out there. Some of you may believe that there are aliens out there. Some of you may believe that we've had contact with aliens or you've had contact with aliens. I would love to hear it if you do, but I genuinely don't believe it. I would love to live in a universe that looked like Star Trek, right, where there's alien life intermingling across light years and we're hopping in and out of space and traveling alien worlds and drinking cool blue alcoholic beverages on some alien cantina. But I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think there are aliens actually out there. I don't think there's actually alien life to connect with. If there is, I don't think it's intelligent life of any kind. I think we have absolutely zero evidence of that and no reason to believe that it's going to happen. It could. It's great for stories. I love sci-fi. I don't think it's real. I don't think the monoliths are in place by aliens. I don't think Voyager 1 is going to make contact with aliens. I don't think we're ever going to meet any aliens. I think we've got enough chaos here with the humans that we have. If aliens came to Earth, they would be either dominating us or disgusted by us. I don't think they'd want to bother mingling with us. It's not my belief that alien life exists anywhere else in the universe. I'd love to hear if you disagree with me, or maybe if you agree with me. Either way, curious for your thoughts. Who's building the monoliths? Who's out there in space? Is Star Trek, in fact, our future? I don't think it is. And just to close things out for today, two last items. One, some Republicans in Congress want to rename parts of our oceans after Donald Trump. Fuck you guys, right? Get off the guy's shaft, right? Give it a break. Nobody needs to name anything after Donald Trump. Let him either be elected again, let him serve another term effectively, maybe, let him die. Then you can start naming things after him. But to do it while the guy's running his campaign, like, get off his knob, right? Take your mouth off his bits and pieces. Get over it. We don't need to name anything after a recently fired executive while he's running for office again, nor should we be naming anything after Joe Biden for that matter either, nor should we be naming anything after George W. Bush, period, because he's a douche. Last item, we started with technology. Let's end with technology. In Wired magazine earlier this week, Adrian So writes on his Ray-Ban Wayfarers, and Adrian really seems to love them. If you haven't seen these are glasses or sunglasses. They're Ray-Bans. They look like Ray-Bans, but they have headphones in them. They have AI capabilities with them. Sounds like something you definitely don't need, but the way Adrian describes it, something he's come to really, really love. So interesting to check them out. You can look them up on Meta. You can look at Ray-Ban. They cost around $300. There's some interesting ideas and capabilities they can do. Adrian's talking about being able to read a book in Spanish with some translation here. I'm sorry, I said he for Adrian. I believe Adrian's a female, right? Yeah, she is. Adrian's a female. Graduate from the University of Virginia. So congratulations, Adrian, for spending some time here in the great Commonwealth, even if you're living in Portland, Oregon now. But Adrian talks about her enthusiasm for the sunglasses, how now she doesn't want to live without them, got a second pair so she can enjoy them at home and her sunglasses out on the road while she's running. Interesting perspective. I've been tempted to look into these more. I've resisted the urge because I don't want to spend $300 on anything because I'm cheap that way, but maybe something to check out. I think, there's bigger, bulkier things that are out there that nobody really wants to wear and aren't practical right now. But a pair of shades, I wear sunglasses whenever I'm driving. A lot of us do. A lot of us wear glasses during the day. Hey, this might be something worth checking out more. So Adrian, thanks for the review. In Wired, appreciate your enthusiasm, love technology, love to see things like this that are actually potentially useful and entertaining and practical to some extent. So you can check those out if you want. So thanks for listening. Friday, we'll have Dave back to continue our normal format. Thanks for taking time to enjoy today's podcast. Thanks for sharing it. Thanks for hanging out with us a few times each week. We really appreciate you. Until next time, we'll talk on Friday.